Howdy folks, this is Justro at Metcalf Mills bringing you Storytime Tuesday. I got a good one for you today. I guess it's a good one. I just kind of ramble along and just tell you about a few old memories and whatnot. But I hope you enjoy it. Folks, I want to talk to you today about some of the ways community used to be here in the mountains. And I also tell you about some of my personal experiences with things we used to do. When something was going on, it was a big event. Like, one of the biggest things here in the mountains is ramps. And if you don't know what a ramp is, it's a wild mountain onion, and it's real strong. And a lot of people love them. And years ago, it was a big deal to go to the ramp patch. Everybody in the community would get together, and I guess they'd probably walk or ride horses, probably walk, way back in the mountains to the ramp patch, and they'd dig ramps. And I've got some old pictures of everybody around where they'd been digging ramps. A whole bunch of people. A bunch of people. They had big old tow sacks laying there that they'd filled up with ramps. Because it was a wild food that was growing free. And it was a big thing for everybody to get together and go to the ramp patch. And, they enjoyed that day. Probably looked forward to it all year long. Not only did they go gather up food to bring back home, but they got out with their friends and neighbors. Out in the woods, out in the mountains. And they dug ramps. And they had all that fellowship and socializing. And it was a big thing here in the mountains, was ramps. And you've heard me talk about corn shuckings and house raisins and barn raisins and all that kind of thing, but I don't think I've ever mentioned going to the ramp patch like that. Not that I can remember in detail anyway. If I can find my pictures of them, everybody going to the ramp patch, I'll show them on this video if I can find them. It may take me a while to find them and I may not get to it, but if I do, I'll show you the pictures I've got on this video of everybody going to the ramp patch. And it's on a family scale. My grandpa and his brothers, every year, fall of the year, when squirrel season opened, they would all bunch up and go to the head of Indian Creek where they was raised. And they'd stay in the old house there at the home place. And I think they'd stay a week at a time. And they'd just have a big time, hunt and squirrel hunt, and just have a lot of fun all week long. Cook and eat and just have a big time. I remember a story my grandpa told one time. Him and his brother Joe, they was up at the head of the creek, and they together, him and Joe, eat 3 dozen eggs, 36 eggs. And he said that Joe eat more than he did. That's a lot of eggs. And like I said, they'd get out and squirrel hunt together. And when I was growing up, my grandpa, he built him a little cabin on Chestnut Mountain here where we live. And just a little one-room cabin. he'd go up there and he'd cut wood, and he had him a little wood cook stove in there. He'd cook and eat and have a good time. Go up there and stay all night. Me and him went up there one time and stayed all night, and I think we stayed all night. I'm pretty sure we did. Anyway, we went up there. He's wanting to go squirrel hunting, and he was pretty old then. I thought, well, I'll go with him, you know, and we got up there, and he went up the holler, and I went out around towards the ridge. I hadn't got just a little ways around through there. I seen a big old gray squirrel run up a tree there. And I got my rifle up and took a bead on him and rolled him out, and Pa heard me shoot, and he automatic, he wanted to know what I'd shot at, and I got that squirrel and started back towards the cabin, and got back out there, and he seen that big squirrel, and boy, he got excited. They love squirrels. I mean, they was raised on them. That was one of the main things that they eat growing up was squirrels. And all their life, I mean, they'd either boil them and fry them, or they would boil them and make gravy in them. Most of the time, they boiled them and then fried them. But that tickled Pa to death because I'd killed him a squirrel. And we cleaned it and fixed it for dinner, and that's what we eat. And, boy, that's a good memory, I tell you what. This cabin's gone now, that wildfire we had in '07 that burned it down, but my memories are still just as clear as a bell. And when I was a little boy growing up, most all my life, growing up, Daddy had an old guile camping trailer up on just about probably 100 yards up from Pa's cabin, and he had built him and my cousin Robert had built a little porch on the side of the camper trailer, and it was the prettiest little old place. I mean, it was pretty the way Daddy and Mother had it fixed, and the way him and Robert built that little porch. And I remember the handrail they had on the little porch was made out of poplar poles about that big around. They'd cut them little poplar poles and put 3 poplar poles around the outside of the porch for a handrail. And they told me later they done that because of me, because I was a little baby, you know, probably 3 or 4 years old running around, and Mother's afraid I'd fall off of the porch, so him and Robert built that little poplar pole handrail around it to keep me in. But we'd go up there and stay at that camper, and it was so nice to get out in the woods and get away from the house and just have a place to go stay. And I mean, I know everybody ain't got that, but there's still a few campgrounds around. To my experience, or what I've heard, they're way more expensive than they used to be. We used to go camp, if I remember right, when we started camping, I think it wouldn't, but about, I want to say $2 a night to camp. What I can remember, $2 a night to go camping. And now I think it's way up. I think it's pretty high to go camp at a decent campground. I'm talking about a campground back in the mountains. We used to go over to Black Mountain Campground over on Toe River, and It's up above Carolina Hemlocks, and it was a campground way back in the mountains. And my family's camped there. I guess Mother and Daddy's camped there just about all their life when we camped, and that's where we always went. It was my favorite place. We always tried to find a camping spot that was as far away from everybody, as we could, to have a little privacy on the campsite, but it was not privacy, but it was still, it wasn't real close and crowded, and it was, like I said, in the woods, and that river ran down through there, and it was a good place to go. Sometimes, getting back to Ramp Patch, sometimes people still get together and go to the Ramp Patch, but it's just a handful of people. It ain't like it used to be. Used to, everybody in a community would go, but now it's just a few gets together and goes. They might not even live close. Last time I went with one of my uncles, and we had a good time going and digging ramps and coming back. And Daddy loved them, and that's about one of the main reasons I'd go, was to dig him some ramps. And it's so good, and it brings so much balance to your life to get out in the mountains and spend some time, whether you're just out taking a walk on a trail or camping, or you got a place to go stay and spend some time in the woods. It really does you good. It brings some balance back to you, because life is so busy, we don't hardly have time to breathe. And I think that's why everybody thinks life passes by so fast, is because they're so busy. When you're busy, you're not enjoying life. You're just wide open all the time. You don't have time to enjoy life, and it's hard to. But it seems like, to me, in my experience, it seems like the more I focus on the present right now, the slower time goes. It may not be like that for nobody else in this world, but that's how it seems to me. The more present I try to stay in what I'm doing right now, the slower time goes. I'd be anxious to hear if anybody else has experienced that. But it's good if you can to get out in the woods, out in the mountains. I mean, there's plenty of public access places you can go walk a trail, especially here where we live in western North Carolina. It's mountains everywhere. The Blue Ridge, the Black Mountains, the Great Smoky Mountains. There's tons of places to go walk and hike and get out. And if you ain't never been to the Smoky Mountains, you need to go, because it's a special place. There's a lot to see, and I don't expect there's nowhere else in the world like it. So make some time. It's summertime. Don't let it get away. Take your young'uns and go to the mountains somewhere and walk on some trails and hunt some rivers and waterfalls and look at some wildlife and just have a good time. And I promise you, it'll do you some good. It always does me. And on today's Storytime Tuesday, I also wanted to share a couple thoughts with you. And one of these thoughts I thought about for a while, and the other one, I was talking with a friend of mine, and she's a lady from church, and she's known me since I was a baby. And we was talking the other day, and she told me something that really kind of grabbed a hold of me when she said it, because I know it was the truth. And what I was thinking about is it kind of goes hand in hand. My thought was, you can't give somebody something that they can't hold. I can't give somebody something that they can't hold. what she told me was, somebody can't give you something they don't have. And that just really, I guess you could say, quickened in my mind when she said that, because it's just it's so true. You know, somebody can't give you what they don't have. And if you think about that real hard, it might bring you some peace. And them's two thoughts that I'm thankful for. You know, just knowing that, because they both helped me a lot. And I hope maybe they help you a little bit too. Like this video if you will. Subscribe to my channel if you ain't already. Tell your friends about me. Hit that notifications bell so you'll get notified and you'll get to watch these videos while they're fresh, before they get any age on them. I hope y'all had a great Independence Day yesterday. We had a good time, me and the girls. We had a big day, and most of it was around the house. We done a few things, and we cooked us a good big evening meal yesterday before I took them to watch the fireworks again. So they watched fireworks twice this year, and we really had a good time, and I hope y'all did too. We cooked outside on the fire, and they love that, and I do too. Made us some homemade bread. We just had a big old time. But anyway, I hope y'all had a wonderful Independence Day, and hope you remember what that day's all about. This is Justro at Metcalf Mills. I look forward to seeing you next time.